You are losing a war you never declared. Not a war with weapons, a war with words, with glances, with conversations that drain you from the inside without you ever fully understanding why. Every single day, you waste your intellectual capital in sterile battles. You try to reason with the irrational. You try to bring light to people who have chosen, consciously chosen, to live in their own darkness. Society tells you that's patience. Society tells you that's empathy. They are lying to you. That is not virtue. That is slow intellectual suicide. Arthur Schopenhauer, the most ruthless philosopher in modern history, had a more brutal method. A method that is not about winning the argument, not about convincing anyone, a method designed to annihilate your opponent through total indifference. Today, you are going to learn how to stop being prey to other people's stupidity. You are going to learn how to become a mountain. And the mountain does not argue with the rain. You know this feeling, that heat rising in your chest when someone states something completely absurd with absolute certainty. Your brain locks in. You have the facts. You have the logic. You feel this visceral, almost physical need to correct the record, to save the truth. So you engage, you explain. You lay out your reasoning carefully, methodically, even generously, and then watch what happens next. The more logic you give them, the more aggressive they become, the more precise your argument, the more they hate you for it. The brighter you shine, the more they want to put you out. Why? In modern psychology, this is partly explained by the Dunning-Kruger effect, the documented phenomenon where people with low competence dramatically overestimate their own abilities. But Schopenhauer saw something far darker underneath that. For him, stupidity is not a lack of information. It is not ignorance waiting to be cured. Stupidity is an ego defense mechanism, a wall the mind builds to protect itself from the pain of being wrong. When you try to enlighten someone who has built that wall, you are not becoming their teacher. You are becoming their personal enemy, because in their mind, your clarity is not a gift. It is an attack on everything they have used to define themselves, and you wonder why it never works. Schopenhauer wrote in Parerga and Paralipomena a truth that should be permanently engraved in your mind. We cannot see in others more than what we are ourselves. Sit with that. If you are an eagle, you cannot explain the sensation of flight to a mole, not because you are cruel, not because you are arrogant, because the mole's entire biological and cognitive architecture was never designed for that altitude. There is no cruelty in acknowledging an incompatibility. There is only clarity. When you argue with a fool, you are not elevating the conversation. You are lowering your frequency to match theirs. You are stepping down into their arena, and in their arena they hold every advantage, because their weapon is pure irrationality, and you are still playing by the rules of logic. This is the fatal error most intelligent people make, over and over again throughout their entire lives. You treat intelligence as a universal currency, as something everyone possesses in equal measure, just waiting to be activated by the right conversation. But intelligence is not a currency, it is a weapon, and the majority of people are not afraid of being wrong. They are terrified of what being wrong would mean about who they are, so they will destroy you socially before they allow themselves to die intellectually. You are not dealing with a debate partner. You are dealing with a cornered animal. So what is the brutal path forward? It is the total withdrawal of your energy. In dark psychology circles, this is known as the gray rock technique, making yourself so dull, so unresponsive, so completely unreactive, that you offer nothing for the aggressor to feed on. No emotion, no resistance, no fuel. But for a superior mind, this goes further than a defensive tactic. This becomes what I call armed silence. Think about the great Chinese strategist Sima Yi, facing rivals who insulted him publicly, who mocked his competence, who even sent him women's clothing to humiliate him in front of his troops. He did not respond. He smiled. He accepted the insults with a stillness that terrified his enemies more than any counterattack ever could have. He was not suppressing his anger. He was weaponizing his calm. He did not need to prove his genius. He waited. He let the fool exhaust himself in his own noise. And when the moment came, the real moment that actually mattered, Sima Yi was rested, sharp, and ready. When you refuse to react to a stupid provocation, something terrifying happens to the other person. You remove their mirror. Without your reaction, their performance has no audience. Their aggression echoes back at them in an empty room. You leave them alone with their own emptiness. That is the purest form of contempt that exists. Not rage, not mockery. Silence. Schopenhauer did not just teach this, he lived it in Berlin while Hegel dominated the universities with what Schopenhauer publicly called meaningless verbiage dressed up as profundity. He did not waste his years writing furious rebuttals in academic journals. He did not campaign for recognition. He did not beg the intellectual establishment to take him seriously. He scheduled his lectures at the exact same time as Hegel's. Nobody came. The lecture halls were empty. By any conventional measure of the time, he had failed completely. A weaker man would have crumbled, would have screamed about injustice, would have abandoned his ideas or bent them to fit what the market wanted to hear. Schopenhauer went back to his desk and kept writing. For 30 years, the world ignored him. He continued anyway, because he understood something that most people never grasp. Time is the only filter capable of separating gold from mud. He wrote, "Fame is for ordinary people. Immortality is for the others." By the end of his life, Hegel had become an artifact of an era, a footnote, a name students memorize for exams and immediately forget. Schopenhauer had become the intellectual father of Nietzsche, the philosophical muse of Wagner, and one of the thinkers Einstein kept on his desk. His victory did not come from a single argument won. It came from decades of ruthless patience. Here is the hardest part, the part nobody wants to hear. To apply this method consistently, you have to kill something inside yourself. You have to kill your need to be right, not the desire to think clearly, not the commitment to truth. Those are sacred. What you need to destroy is the compulsion to have that truth acknowledged by the exact person who is least equipped to recognize it. The need to be right in front of a fool is not a pursuit of truth. It is a pursuit of validation disguised as one. And if you need the fool to confirm your intelligence, the uncomfortable reality is that you are not yet fully convinced of it yourself. Think about that. Kill the guilt that pushes you to educate everyone you encounter. You are not the tutor of humanity. You are not responsible for every mind you come across. You are the guardian of your own mental sanctuary, and every second you spend explaining logic to someone who does not value it is a second stolen from your own depth, your own work, your own greatness. Let the dogs bark. The caravan of your mind must keep moving without even turning its head. The next time you face stupidity, and you will, probably before this day is over, do not furrow your brow. Do not prepare your counter-arguments. Do not feel that heat rise in your chest and mistake it for a call to action. Breathe. Observe. Watch the scene the way an entomologist watches a fascinating but ultimately irrelevant insect. Note it with detached curiosity. Smile inwardly at the perfect predictability of it all. And withdraw. Real superiority does not require witnesses. It does not need applause or recognition or even the quiet satisfaction of having the last word. It sustains itself in the silence of a focused mind, in the clarity of a thought pursued to its full depth. Be a mountain. Let the storm exhaust itself against your sides. The storm will pass. It always does. The noise will fade. It always fades. And when it does, you will still be exactly where you were, unmoved, undamaged, and still standing. If you are ready to protect your intellectual sanctuary, the link is in the description.